Hey guys, glad you're here. So we're gonna get started. So today will be kind of off the cuff. I don't exactly have a set schedule or anything like that, but we're basically gonna go over all the basics of Unity, how to get it, and then how to get started with VR. So it should be good. I don't think it'll be crazy long, probably sub an hour or something like that. But overall, I think you guys should come away with what you need to know when looking at Unity. You should no longer look at Unity and go, I just don't know what the heck is going on here. Because then every time you open a new program, there's a bunch of buttons and it's confusing. But I see we have Lucas in here, Mr. Two Toes. Hey, Mr. Two Toes, glad you joined. But, okay, so with anything like this, I think the first place you would start is how to actually download the thing. So if we just type in Unity download to Chrome, we would get download Unity. You click on it, and you see you have a couple options here. Choose your Unity plus download or download Unity Hub. You're going to want to click on download Unity Hub. It's going to save this, and you're going to run it, right? So this is, sorry. So this is basically, they had a bunch of different versions of Unity, and people were getting really confused. So they created Unity Hub, which allows you to manage your Unity versions. Because they were releasing a new one like every 3 months or so, and people were like, what version are you using? And you really were never sure. So once that's installed, you're going to get Unity Hub. Very cool. And so it's going to open up something like this. Here's the projects. But basically, you will click on Installs, and you will click Add. You will then get whatever is basically the recommended release, probably. I'm sure there's a little bit of a newer one, yeah. So you have this 2021. It's just... Sorry, and I should say the versions of Unity just go by basically the date. So this one is 2020, which was last year, version 3, and then these are the subversions under that. So you see this newer one is 2021, the older one is 2019. So they're not recommending this one just because it's probably too new and has a little bit of bugs in it. So I won't download that, but I will say that when you download it, if you want to do Android, because maybe you're developing for the Quest or a VR headset, you're going to want to make sure to click, let me see if I can actually, yeah, you want to make sure that this is checked here. And that being said, if you want to develop for iOS, you're going to need to make sure that's checked. You won't need the documentation since it's online. Let's see, and this one, IL to CPP, you'll want that as well. Make sure that those are checked. Hey Ben, glad you joined. We're just going over, and it's all recorded so you can check it out after, but we're just going over how to download Unity and what you want to download when you're doing it. And then we're going to jump into Unity. Okay, so if you look at my projects here, it's basically all the ones that I've been working on. And hey, Fantastic Spider, glad you joined. We are currently just working on getting started. So I've got this one open. So when you open up Unity, the first thing that you're going to see is basically a project window, a console window, a scene hierarchy, an inspector, and let's close this window because that won't be there. So this is basically what you're going to see. I actually don't really move a lot of these windows around. I like them where they are. Some people like to take this game window, which is what you're actually going to see when you start the game, and they like to move it down here or something so that they can see both the scene and the game. I don't like that personally. I like to have a big, nice window that I can see through. I don't want it to feel cluttered. So, very cool. So if we take a look at the scene here, basically we have a bunch of stuff on it, right? We have this helmet, we have this wall, and we have these lights. And you'll notice that as I click these objects, they are being highlighted over here. The reason for that is that everything that lives within your scene, in a scene you can have multiple of. You can have 3 scenes, you can have 100 scenes. But everything that lives within a scene is going to be shown over here in the hierarchy, right? So we have a camera, we have a directional light, we have a post-process volume. These are all the things that just are there when you start it, and they're all under sample scene. This is the logo for a scene, so you know that. The project window is everything that lives in your project. So a scene may or may not have some of the things that are in this project window, but a project window will always have everything that lives in your game in general. So let's see, even if this simple camera controller is not anywhere in this scene, it is in the project. So this is where you'll import textures, import models, import things like that. And this is where you'll actually build a scene out of it. So if we take this helmet here, let me see, safety hat, and we delete it. Oh, looks like it's a prefab. Give me 1 second here. Let me unpack that, and then let me delete it. You'll see that it's now gone from the scene. And I believe if we go into models, I'm sure they have the helmet in here somewhere. But anyway, let's just take this small plane. Let's add it. And it has a reflection probe, so we're having a hard time seeing it. Okay, but now it's in the scene, right? So very cool. I'll quickly say to navigate the scene, you basically want to hold right click and use the WASD. That's pretty much the easiest way to do it. The second easiest way, if you want to focus on an object, is to double click it and now hold Alt, and you can rotate around it. Alt and left click, I should say, and you'll be able to rotate around it. So that's good. So that's the scene hierarchy. That's where everything happens in the scene. The project where all the, and now you can see if I throw a hammer out there, now I have that hammer. It's being blocked by the reflection probes, but you can see the, you can see it there. You can see the outline of it, let's say that. So the inspector over here is basically exactly as it sounds. It allows you to inspect the objects in your scene. So what does that mean exactly? So if I click on directional light per se, I click on directional light, and let's rotate this around. You can see that it is in fact a light. And I will say that real quick, if you're clicking on an object and you click W, it'll let you translate it. If you click E, it'll let you rotate it. And if you click R, it'll let you scale it, which doesn't do anything for a light like this since it's a directional light, but that's how you would do it. Let's say this bucket, for instance, I could scale this and make it bigger using that. I could also scale it just in that direction, which will of course make it look bad just in that direction and just in that direction, which looks a little bit better now. It kind of looks like a steam tower or something, so that's kind of cool. But back to the inspector. If I click on directional light and we look in the inspector over here, you will see that we have a transform component and a light component. Now, just because I called this directional light, and welcome to the people who just joined. Looks like Goose. Hey Goose, glad you're here. We're just currently going over we're just currently going over the different windows in Unity. So if we click on directional light, we can see that it acts as a light. Now if I rename this by clicking F2, if I rename this not a light, we'll see that when I click on it, it's still a light. So what something is named in the scene actually has nothing to do with its functionality, what it does. The only thing that designates what something's functionality is loving Unity loading times. Yeah, Unity can be tough with that for sure, depending on your computer. Even my computer right now is having a hard time for some reason, and I'm not sure why. But anyway, so it's not the name that gives something its functionality. It's these components over here. And so what I mean by that is Unity is a component-based game engine. If I want to add functionality to something, let's say that I want to make a character jump when he presses spacebar, that is going to be a component. If I want a character to move to the right when I click the left key or the right key, that is going to be a component. I can if I create an object over here and I say like character, this character is nothing right now. If I click this and look in the inspector, it's literally nothing except a transform component. And a transform component basically just says that it has a place in the scene. So if I click it, click W and move it, you'll see that over here, those values are changing. So basically the transform component just says like, yeah, it can be positioned. If I want this to be a light, what I have to do is add a light component. So you'll see that now, even though it's named character, it's actually acting as a light, right? So that's interesting. Light component makes it a light. Transform component makes it a transform. And you can add a bunch of different components. It can be a bunch of different things. Like for instance, it could be a light, but I could also add physics to it by giving it a rigid body. And let's see, let's place it like, let's place it over here. Well, let's not worry about the physics, but let's go into a few common components that you can use. So that's light. A light will let you turn something into a light, either directional, a spotlight, so you can see that. I think it's not powerful enough for you to see. No, you can see it right there a little bit. You guys see the spotlight on there? Let's turn up the intensity. Yeah, so now it's a spotlight, so you can build out these fun little scenes using stuff like this. I somehow got Unity to load on my potato of a laptop one day. I will be going through how to add hands. I will probably talk about how to add hands. I don't know. Loading in the Oculus integration. Well, actually, you know what? Maybe I can, actually. We can go over that, because this isn't... We'll do that at the end, though. We'll do the VR stuff at the end. So, cool. So, spotlight, point light, anything like that. Turn the intensity up, turn it down. If I want to add physics to an object, there's two things that I need to do. First of all, I can right-click in my scene, go down to 3D object, and it should be noted while we're here that this is also a great way to create a bunch of other objects, such as effects, like particle systems, lights, audio. So if I wanted to do some audio, I would create this, and I would add an audio clip here, which you can import basically by just... Well, let's not talk about that quite yet. But let's move along with what we were doing. Let's make a cube. Okay, cool. Let's move it up, and I believe these will have box colliders on them. Cool. So a cube, when you create it, comes with a cube, a mesh renderer, and a box collider. The cube and the mesh renderer allow it to have the look of a cube. It's basically saying, hey, render that to the screen. And the box collider is going to give it bounds as defined by the physics system. So if I start this now, nothing happens, right? And you might think, well, didn't we attach it to physics? Didn't we give it this box collider? Shouldn't it like fall or something? And you're half right. We have the box collider, it does have bounds, but we didn't actually add a rigid body to it. And a rigid body is basically going to tell it, okay, now it acts under physics. It has a mass of 1. It has a drag, an angular drag. Does it use gravity? Is it kinematic? Which, don't worry about that. But let's go ahead and start this now, and let's actually rotate this a little bit. Very cool. So just like that, without even coding or anything like that, you add a box collider, you add a rigid body to a cube, and suddenly it's a cube that acts under physics. So if we pick it up, it'll fall again. If we rotate it, it'll probably fall off. Yeah, so it's gone. It's falling. But yeah, you don't need a good computer to run Unity. It'll certainly make things a little faster, but it's not strictly necessary. Okay, so physics, light stuff. Yeah, so let's go back into what are some of the other things we can create. An audio source. So again, this is the scene hierarchy. This is where things live in your scene. And then this is the project where things just live in your game in general. So we have an audio source. It does, let me see, do I have this turned on to this? It does not currently have an audio clip. So that audio source, this component, again, because it wouldn't be something that plays audio if it did not have this component, this needs an audio clip. Now, do we come with any? We don't, which is good because let's show you guys how to actually... So let's say you create a folder, which actually, let's do this way. Create... Oop. So you right-click, create, and folder, and let's call it audio. You will want to organize your projects, otherwise you're going to have a hard time. Hey, Neon, glad you're here. We're just going over the basics of Unity, essentially. So from there, you would right-click, and this is how you get models, this is how you get audio, this is how you get textures, anything like that. You basically just, anything that Unity knows how to import, it'll allow you to import it. So let's do import new asset, downloads. I must have some audio in here somewhere. Yeah, this is zipline slide FLAC. Okay, cool. So this is a sound effect that sounds like that. You know, it doesn't really mean anything right now, but the point is, then I would take my audio source and I would move that onto it. And now if I play on awake, meaning play when the game starts, and I loop it, and I turn the volume up, and I have the spatial blend to 2D. If you make it 3D, it'll be a 3D sound, and you'll have to be near it to hear it. So a lot of that, you'll be doing a lot of that in some VR development. If we play, let's see here. It's probably playing, it's probably just too quiet for us to hear. Perhaps I have a louder sound. Silkworm out. Is very close, Daniel. Is very close indeed. I must have a louder sound in here somewhere. That would make more of a point with this. Maybe this one. Oh, this one's quiet as well. But anyway, you guys get the point. I'll move on because this isn't a whole audio tutorial. So, cool. So we know how to make audio. We know how to make lights. We know how to make audio 3D. You would change it to this. You know how to change the lights. What else? So let's go over some of the the other fundamental things that you can create. If we go into, let's create a new folder and let's call it art. If I want to change the look of something, because you see that this cube that I created, it doesn't really have a look to it, does it? It's kind of just a cube. Whereas these other things like this wall, it seems to have this sort of nice texture on it. And it doesn't look like this. It doesn't look just like that. So the way you change how something looks is by creating a material. So let's go into material. And let's just call it, let's call it gray. And then basically over here in the inspector, because again, that's where we change properties of an object. So once we click it, it opens up. If we click away from it, it's gone. Click gray. Let's make this some sort of gray because this is the color of the material. And then if we put it on the wall, that wall would now be gray. It doesn't have that nice texture that it had before. So you see that that must have had a material that was making it look that way. But how do you get it to look like it has a texture? Let's Control Z out of that. Very cool. And let's go ahead and import, same way we did with the audio, just some random picture. Doesn't really matter because we're just making a point right now. Let's get Mary Jane's face. Okay, and then you see we've clicked on it, and over in the inspector we can now see all the different properties that we can change of this. And it's a texture. So let's see, now we click base map, which is basically just saying this, what you're seeing. And we should be able to do Mary Jane. Okay, cool. So now let's also change this to white so that it doesn't have a grayish tint. And let's put her face on there. So now we have Mary Jane's face. You know, the aspect ratio is actually pretty good too. So now we have Mary Jane's face on the wall. And that was basically just as simple as importing this texture, creating material, and then dragging it onto the object. So you can find a bunch of textures from places like textures.com. This is just a bunch of free textures that you can get, basically concrete wall. You can even get bread and things like that, stone, and this is all free, and you can use it in your projects. Well, some of it is free. Let me see. Yeah, they'll normally let you download up to a medium size. If you want more high-res textures, which you don't want anyway because VR resolution isn't good enough for you to see them. Like you would, for instance, what I mean by that is if you got an 8K texture and you put it in your game, the amount of pixels on a VR screen is not good enough for you to delineate the detail of those textures. You would just see a texture the same way that you would see it if it was just a large or just a medium. Because, again, the resolution is not good enough. So, very cool. So that's materials. We have the scene, the project, the other things that you can create. Let's take a look. Materials. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything here. Another big part of this is slightly more advanced, but another big part of Unity you'll find is creating what's called prefabs. Prefabs are basically objects that live in your project folder that you can reuse over and over again in the scene. So let's say I set up this workbench. It's a workbench. All those objects are parented to each other. And this is worth noting as well. If I took this jigsaw and I moved it out from under the workbench, when I move the workbench, that jigsaw is no longer going to move. You see it's not moving there. The reason for that is that it's no longer a child of the workbench. So if I take that jigsaw and I put it back under workbench, it will now move with it again. So that can be a really good way. You can get really like kind of sneaky with that and position things correctly to make math easier and things like that. When does Silkworm come out, Reagan? Very soon. Very soon, Reagan. For playtesters, very soon, sorry, I should say. For everybody else, yeah, a few weeks. Six weeks? Depends how long Oculus takes to review. So, very cool. But back to prefabs. You see these are all different objects. They're not the same object. I can move this hammer independently. It doesn't really matter. But let's say you put all these objects together so that they look good. So that they look good as a unit. It now looks like this workbench. Even though these are all separate objects, I put them together and it looks like a nice workbench. If I want to make multiple of those, what I can actually do, and let's create a folder and call it prefabs, open it up, I can drag it from the scene view into here, and I can open it up, and now I have a, you don't actually need to open it up, I just did to show you. Now you have this same workbench that you dragged from the scene. But the power of it comes in where I say, okay, well now I want 2 workbenches, let me drag another one out. And I didn't need to do all the same setup that I had to do with that first workbench. Because it's a prefab, I now have a second one. And it's right here. It comes with all the objects. It's very nice. Now there's 2 of everything, and it's exactly as the first one was. So you use this a lot when you're doing things like enemies, where you'll basically create like some enemy. He's a bunch of objects. He has a bunch of scripts on him. You make a prefab out of him. And then you make another script called Enemy Manager that spawns a bunch of these prefabs that you know are an enemy, essentially. So that's good. Prefabs are important. The only other thing that's of importance that we won't really go over here is that you can create scripts. So for instance, if I wanted a character to jump, I would call it jump, which just like the scene doesn't mean anything until I've actually coded the behavior for a jump. That's just what I'm calling it so that I remember that that's what it is. And let's just take 30 seconds to talk about this real quick for those of you who are interested in programming. Basically, you have this area right here. This will happen once. It will happen at the start of the game. This object will happen every frame. So you know how people say like, oh, I'm getting 144 frames or oh, I'm getting 220 frames. Everybody's all about frame rate. If you put code in here, it'll run 144 times a second or 220. Or if your frame rate is only 20, it'll run 20 times a second. So this is where code would live if you wanted to run every frame. And this is where code would live if you wanted it to run just at the beginning, just once. So that's kind of the basics. So for something like jumping, you would say get key down. Key code dot space. Let's say you want to jump when you space, and then you'd have to get the rigid body dot add force vector 3 dot up times 20. So that's kind of a lot. We won't really go into that, but basically what this is saying is every frame, every single frame, check if they're pressing space, and if they are pressing space, then go ahead and propel them upwards. So that's where you'd want to put the code, and that's sort of how that works. I would recommend, if you do want to get started with coding, that you go to the, let's see if I can just, I would just use the C# course from Codecademy. It is free. I think there are some paid parts, but you just skip those and do all the free stuff, because that's all you need anyway. Very cool. So that's pretty much the Unity basics, like everything. Okay, and let me say one more thing. You'll probably want to do edit project settings, and you'll probably want to drag that over here. That way you always have them. And then you can click back to the inspector or click back to project settings. Another thing you'll probably want to do when you start Unity is go into preferences, go into colors, and there's a play mode tint. I have mine set to red. The reason I have this set to red, I'll show you real quick. If I move this stud frame, I move it out here, and I click play. It's now out here. Cool. I click unplay, it's still out there. If I click play, and then I'm trying to test out the game, I'm trying to see what works, I'm clicking things, I'm changing them, because a lot of this stuff you can change. You go back to the inspector, you say, yeah, I'm gonna, oh, it's a static object. One second, let me make that unstatic. And let me unpack this so that I can change some things. Okay, cool. So then I go back in. You can't move static objects once the scene is started. And I move it and I say, yeah, okay, that's where well, no, I want it higher. I want it higher. That's good. I'm in the headset, I'm looking at it, and I'm saying like, yeah, that's good. That's where I want it. Then I click unplay, it moves it back. So the reason you want to change that tint to something that's really like, hits you in the eyes is that you need to remember that when you make changes during play mode, they're not going to happen outside of play mode. Because the game isn't really running right now. The game only runs when I click play. See? Oh, it looks like I have some camera controller on here because I can look around. Okay. So that's cool. So you'll want to go into edit. Again, you'll want to go into edit, preference, colors, play mode tint. Because like if I change this to blue, I'm sure you can guess what's going to happen, but now it's blue. So really just pick whatever color you want. I mean, even this is even more obtrusive. I can't really see anything with this. So let me change that back real quick. Cool. Power up again. I'm not sure what you mean, DJ. If you're referring to the anime power up game, that I have not started yet. I'm just trying to finish out Silkworm. Okay, very cool. So now we come into Unity, we understand what we're looking at, we say, okay, these are all the things in my scene. And it maybe actually would help for me to create a new scene and show you. And let's call this one main. So you would do that by create scene. But I make keyboard shortcuts. If I open this up, the only things in it are the main camera and the directional light. There's really nothing else, none of that workbench, nothing like that. If I open up sample scene again, all this stuff is back. So you can imagine on something like Awesome APR, I made a bunch of scenes for each level, and then I was basically loading in between them when you clicked a new level or when you beat a level. It didn't all live in the same scene hierarchy. I had each one. So this was like 1-1. And this would be 1-2 or something like that. And then I would basically load it between them. So that's good. So we're looking at Unity. We have the scene hierarchy, that's everything in our scene. We have the project view, which is everything that's in our project, all our textures, that even don't in the scene. We look over here, we have the inspector. That's going to show us if I click on an object, all the components on it. The components we know are the things that actually give functionality, rigid body, colliders, things like that. So we know that. We have our project settings, which I did not speak to too much yet. But basically, you can change your quality aspects. You can change things about physics. So don't sleep on this area. I mean, I wouldn't look at it too much when you're first starting, but eventually look in there, poke around with some stuff, Google some stuff, see what you can find about what's in here. And then we have, I think that was pretty much it. So E to extrude, power up again. I do not use Blender. Personally, I'm not a modeler. I've never really had to model for my games, so I guess I just never really did it. My games tend to be more simplistic, I suppose. But let's see. So, okay, cool. So we understand Unity. So let's go into how you would get set up for VR. So first of all, if you do not have, if you're making for Quest, if you're making for Rift, you're pretty much good to go on what I'm about to talk about. If you're making for Quest, if you want to test on the headset, you would have to build out each time. And I should say that you'll need to switch to Android if you want to build for Quest. But basically, you'll need to build each time, then test it on the headset. It's going to be really long and arduous. What you want to do instead is buy one of these, which is only $20. I know they try to get you to buy the $75 Quest cable, but this one works just fine, and it's only $20. I would recommend 10 feet, just so that you can be far from your computer while you're testing it. But basically, you'll get this, you'll plug it in, you'll go into the headset, it'll tell you hey, do you want to start Oculus Link? You click yes. Now it's basically a Rift, and when you click play, it'll pull you right into the headset, as opposed to you having to literally build it each time, export it to the headset, then start it in headset. So it's way, way faster. Especially when you're learning, when you're just starting out and you don't really know what you're doing. Even I wouldn't want to make a game where I had to export it each time. Even though I know what I'm doing, the bugs are still just going to appear. And it'll be 4 minutes between iteration cycles on the game, as opposed to the 10 seconds that it is if you have the link. So that's cool. Now that we have that, we basically need to set the project up for it. So basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to click Window, Package Manager, and in here you're going to want to click this gear, do Advanced Project Settings, turn on Enable Preview Packages. Because there's some good VR stuff that they basically are labeling as preview that we wouldn't be able to import otherwise. So you enable preview packages, oh, my bad. Let me open that up again. Then you come down here to XR Plugin Management, and you'll see something here that says import or install. I've already done it, so it won't say that. But once you click that, you can click out of it. You can go into your project settings, which again is Edit Project Settings. But you use them a lot, and that's why I put it over here. You click XR Plugin Management. You'll click Oculus if you're making for Oculus. If you're making for something else, you'll click whatever else. That will import some stuff. Then you want to click this. You'll want to go in, and you'll want to change these to the lower option, because it's just more optimal. And by optimal, I mean it requires less CPU power. So very cool. So that's the first step. The second step would be to actually get a camera. That works with it. And instead of doing that, let's go ahead and import XR Interaction Toolkit. So this is the one that was a preview package. So you won't see this if you don't turn the preview package on. But basically, you'll click Interaction Toolkit, you'll import that. No need to update it because that's going to be a newer version with more bugs. But you'll basically import that, and once that is done, you can right-click, do XR, device-based, room scale XR rig. Now, it should be noted that these action-based ones, room scale XR rig action-based, that is the future of Unity. The reason I don't use it now, and at some point they're going to not support these ones anymore. The reason I don't use this now is because they're kind of just getting started with it, and there's a lot of bugs. If you look up the tutorials online, they're kind of long, and they're really annoying to follow. You can get this working, it's just annoying and unnecessary right now because you can just use this one. So you'll see I created that. I now have this XR rig in the scene. And if I click play, if all goes correctly, I now have VR. Although my computer seems to be having some trouble with the rendering, but that's fine. So you can look around, you can put it on. Cool. So I can look around in VR, it's all very nice. And if I pick up the hands, these two lasers are on them. So there's not much else besides that. They don't have snap turning or anything like that, but basically it gets you started. Oh, I was wondering what the sound is. It's the audio source I put in earlier. You have these lasers, so that's good. I just found out there isn't a VR Ben 10 game. That's a shame, because everybody loves Ben 10. Actually, I did like Ben 10 growing up. You like Ben 10, I assume, DJ? Okay, and probably the last thing we'll go over, and feel free to ask questions as I'm going through this, guys, because I know it's not as simple as I'm maybe making it out to be. A lot of this is still confusing. And it should be noted, and so remember how I was talking about how its components are what give functionality? So if we look at the left-hand controller, it's named that, but that doesn't really make it that. What makes it that is that I have an XR controller, device-based, an XR ray interactor, line renderer, and that's why you have lines coming off your hand, and an XR interactor, line visual. If we open up this script here, there's basically a bunch of code that allows it to be what it is. So if you want to get into coding, it'll help you read these things, but you don't need to worry about that too much for right now. It's one of my top 5. Is it done yet, DJ? Did they finish making it? Okay, so I know you guys are interested in this, so let's see if we can figure out, let's see if we can get hands in here real quick. So let's go over to Unity projects, Silkworm, assets, art. Where would it be actually? It's probably, let me see if I can just find it real quick. And I'm just grabbing the hands from the other project, but you would grab these from the Oculus integration. And so I'll show you that real quick. You'll basically go to the asset store. You'll type in Oculus. It'll have this. You want to add it to your assets, and then you'll want to import it. And basically it'll tell you to open it up in Unity, but you can come in here. Once you have it added to your assets, you can come in here, go into Package Manager, do My Assets, and if we do all of them, you should see Oculus integration in here, and you'll be able to click. So it looks like they have an update. I'm not going to update it, but you'll be able to import it, essentially. So that's good. And that will come with some hands. It'll also come with some other stuff you can use, but let's just focus on the hands for now. So if we do import new asset, I don't want to import that, is why I'm getting it from another project. Oculus, where would it be? Let's say VR, meshes. And let's grab these two guys. Cool. And then if we click these, I think we can put the left hand there and the right hand here. But what you'll notice is that the hands will not be aligned correctly. It's one of my Slug Terror doesn't have one either, making one. Yeah, so they're like totally not aligned. Let me see, there's something in my eyeball. Yeah. Sorry if that was gross. Cool, so we have these hands. They're not animated or anything, but at least we do have hands. And now basically to make them the correct orientation, we're going to need to make a prefab. So that's why we were talking about prefabs earlier, as it's kind of important. But so let's take these. Let's put them in the scene. Let's take this left-hand controller. You know what, actually, I'm not even sure that we need to make a prefab. What we can probably do in this instance is just put these under here. Very cool, and then if we start, so now they're childed to those hand objects. Oh, actually, my bad. So because we did that, we'll also need to get rid of this. So we'll click that and click none. Okay. Okay, so the hands are way down there. You can see it, it's far away. Let's see if we can get it to be closer to us. Let me put a piece of tape on this real quick so that I don't have to keep it on my head. Little pro tip for you guys, put a piece of tape on the laser tracker so that you don't have to keep it on your head. Okay, very cool. So let's take a look. Basically, because it is childed to this left-hand controller, which is accurately tracked to your hand, its position is based on that. So if I move my hand, you can see that while this is changing, its position and whatnot, the one under it is not. It's staying relative. It's staying -3 to the -3 to the right, -3 down, and -1 backwards from the hand. So its position is actually not changing. So if we want it to be like right on the object, we'd make this 0, 0, 0. So now if we take a look again, we have this hand. So it's looking closer. At least it's near it, even if it's not. At least it's near it, even if it's not fully on it. So then from there, we basically would just mess around, change the rotation. Let's say something like that. Change this like that. And that's pretty much good. Now remember, because this is why you make it red or make it blue or something like that. If I was to click unplay right now, it would basically revert all these it would revert all the changes that I made while it was in play mode. So what I need to do first is click this, click copy component, then I unplay, then I paste component values. And now when I go back in, all right, Lucas, glad you came. And now when I go back in, it's in the right spot. So basically we just need to do the same thing with the right hand. And let's see, we can probably just assume what it's going to be, paste component values. If the rotation was 100 on this one, it's probably -100, I would assume. We'll see though. All right, DJ. Okay, so I was wrong. I had it basically opposite. But you guys get the point. So now we have these. Let's hold it backwards and it'll work. All right, cool. So now we have these little hands. They're not awesome. They're not animated or anything, but that's okay. That's a little more advanced, so we won't worry about that for now. So you're in VR, you have hands, and now you understand how Unity works in general. Now, of course, this isn't going to make you... Now, of course, just this isn't going to make you feel totally comfortable in Unity, but hopefully when you're looking at Unity now and you say, oh, I need to change how something looks, you'll know, okay, well, first I need to create a material. I need to call it dark or something like that. And then I can go ahead and put that on the hand. And now I've changed how it looks. Or if you need audio, you'll know, okay, well, what I need to do is create something that has an audio source component. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to click audio and do audio source. And then you'll think, okay, well, now I need to import something, some audio clip to put on here. But basically, hopefully now you will be able to jump into Unity and not feel totally overwhelmed by all the things that you're seeing. It's nothing crazy. The scene, the project, the things in your scene. So, yeah. But hopefully this was actually, well, first let me ask if anybody has any questions. And I'm sure you guys do, or if you don't even know where to start on the questions, because we have time. It's only been 46 minutes or so. So I'll wait a second for that and maybe mess around with some stuff in here. I'll just put Mary Jane's face on everything. And let me think, is there anything else? Okay, looks like no questions, and I do not believe I have anything else. So we will call it there. It's never meant to be long. It was really meant to be a brief introduction. But I would like to do more stuff like this that gets you guys started, because I've been surprised at how everybody wants to start making games. I think it's exciting, and I'm glad. We even had Neon already create a game. It's kind of mind-blowing. Within like 3 days, he had made his first game and submitted it to Oculus, so I think that's really cool. Isaac, this doesn't have to do with the stream, sorry, but when do you think Silkworm will be released on App Lab? On App Lab, it depends. I'm at Oculus's mercy, probably 6 weeks or so. For the playtesters, very soon. So, hopefully you're a playtester. I'm not sure if you are, Isaac, but yeah, sorry about that. Okay, very cool. But anyway, thank you everybody who joined today. I'm glad you guys did, and I will see you guys, I guess, next time I stream, which will be after I finish Silkworm and start Power Up Simulator. So, have a good day.